All right, guys, doing today. We about to hop into a reaction. The first things first, though, just make sure you like that video, man. Hit a like, it's full screen, scroll a bit, like it, and then full screen it back up. You feel me? We got part 3. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of sorry for dragging this out so long. Hopefully we gonna finish the video today. We got 18 minutes left. We're gonna play it on 1.5 speed. Hopefully I don't have too much to say and we just get through it because we've been seeing it enough, right? So anyway, let's get into it.
I know I have to work on thinking about it and rereading it before I react, but I also know that there's a reason I have those feelings.
That was good breakthrough.
Yeah, but that didn't solve anything.
It's not about solving. It's about communication and empathy.
Screw empathy.
But they won't acknowledge that because it's about othering. It's about judging. So they find a way to play the definition game, and they find a way to make empathy a sin. Not because they care about correct definitions, but because they don't want to have to take a look at themselves.
I don't get it. No, I don't understand. Oh.
You're overreacting, dude. I didn't get into college, and check me out. I'm kick-ass.
They don't want to adjust their behavior. They don't want to treat people as they would like to be treated. They don't want to love their neighbors as they would want to be loved. And they can't say that they are being empathetic when they aren't at all, so they twist the definition. So when someone says you aren't practicing empathy here, they can say good because that's a sin, when really what that person is saying is that you aren't behaving like Jesus told you to behave. But they can't admit that they have no desire to act like Jesus told them to act. So they continue to look for verses that they can twist and they can make say what they want it to say.
Remember this, the prodigal son, it says, after he had spent on lavish living all of his inheritance, he was off in a distant land and a famine came. And he got a terrible job, low-level, entry-level job, feeding pigs. And it says that he was so hungry that he was looking at the pods, the food, the pig food, and longing to be filled with it, wanting to eat the pig's food. And then there's something else that we often forget. The text says, and no one gave him anything. What incredible love. And the immediate thing that follows that, no one gave him anything. And then he came to his senses. And he said, the servants, the slaves in my father's house have it better than I do. I should repent. I should go home. I should go back to my father. And he's rehearsing his repentance speech the whole way home. So what changed his mind? What made him say, I'm going to repent. I'm going to change my ways? Well, he came to his senses. And what made him come to his senses? No one gave him anything. Did you know that handouts damn people?
That was obviously not meant to show how loving anyone was here. It was meant to show how hard the world would be without Christ, without returning to God. There are plenty of verses where you are told to feed people, to house people, to clothe people, but he chose to take a verse meant to show how hard the world can be to say, see, we aren't supposed to help people. Because he doesn't let his theology guide his political views guide his theology.
First of all, that's a parable about grace, not faith. Also, the prophet in that story is Elisha, Gehazi's his servant who he cursed with leprosy. I learned this stuff when I was 7. In a coloring book.
Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They will also answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life.
Luckily, there's someone on staff who's an expert in both medicine and the Bible. Also the sequel to the Bible that my grandpa wrote.
Now, you mentioned that I'm being likened to a Nazi. Well, that was Russell Moore in the pages of Christianity Today in a very passive-aggressive way because he didn't like how I interpreted a verse in Matthew 25. I said a very mainstream view that when Jesus is saying the least of these, he's actually talking about persecuted Christians. Now,
that's what a Nazi would say.
Christians are called to care for the poor elsewhere, but in that particular passage, he is talking about how we treat his people is basically how we treat him. And Russell Moore said that that's basically an interpretation that a 20th century German soldier would have, which is an absolutely, it's so absurd, it's hard to even engage with it.
Of course, American evangelicals are not the least of these, besides maybe in critical thinking skills. Russell Moore wasn't wrong here. This is a fascist ideology. She's actively finding a way to remove any reason to have compassion on people who aren't like her. Jesus said that it matters how you treat the least among them, so they find a way to make it so it's not that.
Oh boy. Nazis.
Just like how these same people use the part of the Bible where Jesus says that the poor will always be with us as a way to say that they shouldn't work too hard to help the poor. Because you can use the Bible to say whatever you want the Bible to say.
Emotion. And emotion, while it absolutely has its place and is natural, it very often ignores facts.
Every argument against trans people is based on unfounded fears, not on facts. It's not the trans people in bathrooms assaulting people, it's cis people. It's not drag queens in libraries touching children, it's youth pastors and priests.
He provides so much comfort to those in need, the elderly, the infirm. But don't worry, I don't let him around the kids.
What's that supposed to mean?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's priests, not chaplains. Not all priests, but of course some.
But mentioning that hurts their feelings and goes against their narrative, so they ignore it. They say immigrants are on welfare and leeching off the government, but do ICE raids at places of employment? That's not facts over feelings.
So it used to be when you were, debating someone or talking through an issue, your debate would be based on logic and reason and facts, and maybe you'd give your credentials, like your personal accomplishments, your education, your professional background. But now it's very different. People today, they preface their arguments or they preface their statements with all their victim credentials. They got to lay all their victim cards down on the table. So like I could be here, I could say like 2 + 2 = 4. That's just a fact. And someone who is steeped in critical theory would say, well, I, as a disabled, transgendered, female, immigrant, lesbian, say your understanding of math is based on your white, male, patriarchal, Western privilege.
That's not victim credentials. You're not a victim because you're disabled. You aren't a victim because you aren't cis and straight. People are just acknowledging where their perspective is coming from to give context to what they're saying. Someone who is black is going to experience life differently in America than someone who is white. That's just a fact. Someone who is disabled is going to have a different experience than someone who is able-bodied. Someone who is LGBTQIA is going to have a different experience than someone who is straight and cis.
Real quick, just because I slightly disagree with that, because yeah, we can have different experiences. Now when it comes to math, I think he just needs a preference that it doesn't come from math. Because yeah, as a black man, I would say, like, you may say America's not racist. Systemically, it is, right? My people have been put down. Black people in America have been put down for so long. If you want a quick example, right, look at businesses, black-owned businesses when reintegration happened, specifically the Negro League, right? Black-owned businesses of major league teams. What happened when those teams were merged, none of the black owners got kept, meaning generational wealth was taken away. That option was taken away. Black Wall Street was burned down, all that type of stuff. Like, systemically, we've been kept down. Redlining is still happening today. You can check all that stuff out, right? And then progressively, if you're not building generational wealth, it makes it harder and harder to get out. The gap between lower income schools feeding lower income jobs, and then these people living in the lower income communities, and the cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. It's not being fixed. So, perspective is different. Math don't change. 2 + 2 = 4.
Ryan mentions his race and gender and sexuality all the time, but he doesn't see that as playing his victim card.
This is why a lot of people, they cringe. You might not even realize this is why you feel some of these emotions. Some of you cringe if I talk about something like abortion because you think, well, you're a man. Who are you to talk about that? Or if I talk about something like racism, you say, well, you're white. You can't talk about that. But when I read the Bible, I noticed that skin color is not what qualifies you to speak the truth. Nor does sex, but the truth is just the truth. Popular culture and critical theory today, like I, your pastor, as a white, straight, Christian, able-bodied, 4th-generation American male, I'm basically Darth Vader. I'm the bad guy in all the Hollywood movies.
Because what he's doing is actually playing the victim. You ever have somebody in your life who deflects criticism by taking it to the extreme? I've known a few people who have parents like this, who if you point out anything that they did that even slightly hurt you, they just start saying, oh, I guess I'm just the worst mother ever. Oh, I guess you have a terrible father, because it ends the conversation. I had a friend who would always criticize me, but if I ever called him out on anything, he would go on about how he was a giant piece of shit who could do nothing right, and he was constantly letting everybody down, instead of just acknowledging the one thing I asked him to stop doing. And he did this because it's a deflection. He wanted me to comfort him and tell him he was a good guy and a good friend. Or even if I didn't do that, at least he knew that acting that way would make me not want to call him out in the future because I want to avoid a similar meltdown. That is what not taking accountability looks like. Taking any criticism directed at white, cis, straight men and saying that, oh, I guess I'm just Darth Vader, that is the same hissy fit. That is the same deflection. And of course that's not true. You're not Darth Vader, Ryan. Darth Vader had a redemption arc.
All of this is really tough for the Christian because we have a high view of the individual. We have a high view of human beings.
I'm not sure that's true, but go on.
Being made in the image of God. So that means we believe that their feelings and their stories matter. We don't just look at people as data points or as statistics. We actually do care about their personal experiences. And I think the desire to fix someone's circumstance or to assuage someone's fears or to link arms with them and say, I will fight this battle with you is good. I think it is even Christ-like in some ways. But again, when we are led by things and feelings that aren't true, we can actually be aiding and abetting in someone's destruction and societal destruction rather than something that is good.
She's currently supporting Trump's internment camps. I'm not sure if we should really take her at her word here.
All of the preventable crimes, citizens commit crimes too, but all crimes by illegal aliens are preventable. All of these preventable crimes took place that represent a loss of life, a loss of dignity, a loss of property, a loss of economic opportunity. All of those were the result of a policy choice. We are seeing that now, that Trump has accomplished more in 5 days when it comes to immigration than Biden did over 4 years and over 4 decades. In Washington, D.C. You're going to see a lot of gaslighting, a lot of toxic empathy from Christians, from...
What if she pointed out a crime that a Jewish person did and then said, if we didn't have Jews in our country, then this crime wouldn't be happening? What if she said, if we didn't have black people in our country, then these certain crimes wouldn't have happened? People didn't come to America because their lives were super easy and they just wanted to change. America was seen as a safer place to raise their children. It was seen as a place where they didn't have to constantly look over their shoulders. Allie has children. If she lived in a place where she was afraid that something would happen to them, she would do whatever she could to protect them, including, I am sure, that she would smuggle them out of their country. What are the words carved on the Statue of Liberty? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
And here's the order of deportations. First, we'll be rounding up your tired, then your poor, Then your huddled mass is yearning to breathe free.
Breathers. Got it.
America used to encourage immigration. They did have open borders until 1875. There were no laws preventing anyone from immigrating and becoming an American citizen. But then in 1875, it was decided that they didn't want Chinese women to enter America, so they passed their first immigration law. And then in 1882, they banned all Chinese men as well.
That was doing so racist.
In 1917, further laws were created to make it harder to immigrate to America, which included a list of undesirable races. American immigration laws have always been racist. And even now, these so-called illegals use social assistance far, far less than the rest of the population. They add so much to society and culture, they pay taxes, and they are still used as scapegoats anytime there are any economic problems. It is way easier to just other an entire group of people than to call out politicians, corporations, and billionaires that is actually causing the mess. It's almost like people haven't seen Wicked, that one Simpsons episode.
Are these morons getting dumber or just louder?
Dumber, sir. They won't give up the bear patrol, but they won't pay taxes for it either.
Ducking this issue calls for real leadership. People, your taxes are high because of illegal immigrants. That's right, illegal immigrants. We need to get rid of them.
Immigrants. I knew it was them. Even when it was the bears, I knew it was them.
And no, The Simpsons did not predict the future. This is just a tale as old as time. Other people, other races, immigration has always been used as the main scapegoat to our problems. Would you want to constantly have to prove your citizenship because of the color of your skin or your accent? Would you want to be shackled and taken to Guantanamo freaking Bay for a civil offense? Because that's what this is. Being undocumented is a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter. It's literally the same as being shackled up and put into a concentration camp because you built a fence too far over on your neighbor's property. Or should we separate our feelings from facts and realize that society is better with diversity, not worse? Would you want to be told that you can't get medical care because someone in a religion that you don't practice doesn't agree with that type of medical care? Would you want to be told that you can't marry the person that you love and who loves you, two consenting adults who love each other because somebody else thinks that that marriage is gross? Empathy is so important for society to work, and the only people who would ever make an argument against it are the people who benefit from the suffering of others.
There are people constantly looking to play victim cards, and they're constantly getting offended. They're constantly filing HR complaints.
Uh-oh, did someone file an HR complaint against Ryan?
They're constantly making everyone feel really awkward because just deep down we know it's not supposed to be this way, where everyone's looking for a reason to be offended or to be a victim. Our secular progressive culture has elevated victims to the point that now everyone wants to be one. Think about how crazy and backwards that is.
Only the oppressor thinks that someone fighting for change is playing the victim card. They don't want to live in a society made up of different people with different backgrounds and beliefs. They want a society full of clones of themselves. They want to be a hive mind, they want to be the Borg, and they want their government to make it happen. The problem is, though, that in America, they already have the government in their pocket, and we have already seen how disastrous this way of thinking is. But just remember that when they get rid of one group, they don't stop there. Once their so-called illegal immigrants are gone, once the Muslims are gone, once all the trans people are gone, once all the gay people are gone, they don't say, okay, good, it's over, because they are always going to need scapegoats. When they get rid of everybody who doesn't look like them, when they get rid of all the non-Christians, then they start weeding out the wrong types of Christians. Then they start weeding out the right type of Christian who doesn't support the right people. We all know the poem by Pastor Martin Niemöller. First they came for the communists and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak out for me. It's time to speak out. For some people, it's too late. We waited too long to speak up. But we definitely can't wait any longer. Enough is enough. Donald Trump is threatening my country, as well as Greenland, Panama, Colombia, and more. I have a trans sister living in America right now who is married to someone of Mexican descent. I'm scared. My family's scared. And if you aren't scared, then you aren't paying attention. It's time to get radicalized. It's time to speak up. It's time for empathy. Hey everybody, thank you so much for making it this far. It wasn't an easy one. If you know someone who may benefit from watching it, send it their way. And this time I don't really care.
All right, final thoughts. He was cooking until at the end there he started talking about, like, whatever he started talking about, it just rubbed me the wrong way, you know? Like, he said, how would you feel if you had somebody telling you their marriage wasn't allowed because it's gross? Well, it's a sin, so I don't want to support that. I can acknowledge that it happens. I don't want to support that. And if our country was built on Christian ideals, I don't think those ideals would support that. Nor should they. Also, it's up to the discretion of, the people in power. I'm not saying everything they do is going to be right or wrong. However, when it aligns with Christian ideals, I'm all for it personally, The fact that he said he has a trans sister with somebody of Mexican descent, you know what I'm saying? Like, the fact that he's a Christian and accepting of that, good. Supporting that, I don't know, personally. Right? You could be in her life, right? That's your sister. She just so happens to be trans. But to the point where you're like, yeah, I openly support, like, I'm with that, and, like, you're losing me a little bit. However, I do really highly support the idea overall of empathy and the fact that we do need to care for those who are poor, those who are sick, fatherless, or whatever adjective of destitution you want to use. However, that hand can only be extended out so far, right? Like, obviously, we would take people in if they can, right? You know, you take a gay person if you can, because it's a human at the end of the day. Now, do I support their actions? No. But do I support the fact that they are alive and that they should get to know Jesus? Yes. And, you know, I can obviously not agree with their lifestyle choice. I can obviously set rules if I'm housing them about, like, hey, you can do this, you can't do that. I would really implore you to not do this, and I would hope that you are more than willing to listen to my beliefs, considering I'm letting you stay in my house. But, you know, would I go so far as to shun them and kick them out of my house and let them face the elements just because they're gay? By no means. So, yeah, I think empathy is very important. I can see why my brother sent me this. This is actually very toxic and very disgusting. I do agree with this guy that empathy is important. However, the extent to what we give empathy for, very, very nuanced. But like I always say, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a teacher, whatever. You know, the Bible is a big book. Haven't read all of it yet. Yeah. And I've said this before, you know, you can love somebody without supporting what they do. And I think that that's a lot of what Christian culture needs to be, is loving people but not supporting the actions that they're taking, loving them enough to rebuke them and point them in the right direction, just like a parent would any of the kids that are about to touch a hot stove. And yeah, we just continue on from there. Thank you. All right, that's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourselves fantastic rest of your day. Peace.